Hello everyone, today we're going to talk about the meaning of life and how to find your purpose and what to do if you struggle with something like nihilism and pessimism and seeing life as fundamentally without any purpose. My name is Joanna, I'm a life coach and I help people with the process of self-actualization and individuation. In today's video, I'm specifically going to focus on a theory called life mission theory, which is relatively fresh theory. There isn't that much about it on the internet. There are some papers, and I've included the links to them in the description if you're interested in a further study. But it's a very interesting theory because not only it has quite a unique sort of meta perspective on the human condition and life in general, but also it combines elements from philosophy and psychology into this general whole. It comes from, I believe it comes from existential psychology, which is like a combination of general psychology and existentialism. So there will be elements from both. I assume it's come from this direction, but there isn't that much information on it at the moment. Now, life mission theory states that we are all born with purpose, and basically every living being in this world has a purpose, which is to avoid suffering and pain. So it's not just about surviving and, living day by day, but also taking actions to avoid or at least minimize the suffering and pain that you might experience due to your, negligence or mistakes. So basically the theory states that what happens for most people is that since we are born with this, natural and creative potential to explore and create and to make the best of our lives, but because of the disappointing experiences early on in life and then later on in life, these positive intentions which come from the true self, from this natural self, got sort of stunned so that we give up on this natural process and we start to follow this so-called anti-self, which is exactly in a direct opposition to our natural drives, natural self, if you like. So the anti-self is described as corresponding to the Jungian archetype of a shadow, which is basically something that is in a direct opposition to it. I mean, we could even go as far as to say that the shadow could be the representation of the evil in the world because it's the adversary. It's something that's in a direct opposition to our intentions, to what we believe is good, to creativity and general, moral code and what is right for other people and for ourselves. So basically the pattern is very simple. The more we give up on this natural drives and intentions to, reduce suffering, reduce pain, and create something valuable with our time, the more we open the door towards this anti-self and its destructive tendencies. So, for example, if you look at people who are very self-destructive, they take drugs, they don't have anything to do in their lives, perhaps they drink a lot, they might be abusing towards other people. These people usually could be termed as taking this opposite direction to the natural self. They follow this shadow, they follow this anti-self, and follow these destructive tendencies because they don't reduce pain, they don't reduce suffering, neither for themselves, not for the environment, and especially they might be very destructive for the environment as well. They take this path, and the more they take this path, the more this natural inclination to reduce suffering will be diminished. So this is the basic outline of this theory, especially in the relations to this true and natural self and the anti-self. Now, this theory takes an interesting turn because it also considers the idea of integrating your shadow, which is, this one of the central ideas in Jungian analytical psychology, which enables a person to individuate and develop the whole potential, develop the whole self, so they can become the best version of themselves and they can be as natural and authentic as possible. That's in short. Accordingly to life mission theory, there are basically 4 stages of this development, this integration, if you like, but the order of them isn't specifically stated. I mean, the theory states that basically you can go from one stage to the stage number 3, or you can go to the stage number 4 and then fall back to the stage number 2, and so on and forth. So in the first stage, you're basically unconscious. You're completely driven by these unconscious motivations. Sometimes you might be going along with the wishes of yourself. Sometimes you might be going along with the intentions of the anti-self. So sometimes you are creative, sometimes you are destructive, but you're not reflecting a lot on this issue. You are basically unconscious and going along with your natural impulses. Now, the second stage is the assumption that you are generally good. You follow this rigid path of doing what's best for you, doing what's best for other people. You assume that everything is alright and you are a moral person. You might be very creative, you might be very rigid. It depends on your temperament and, your whole personality and development. Unfortunately, what you repress will express itself through other mediums. So generally, this sort of people who assume they are all good will express their shadow, will express their anti-self by projecting it to the world. So normally, this sort of good people will assume that they are all good, they are very moral, ethical, they don't hurt anyone, and that the world is a very bad place. They might be, even taking this idea into an extreme, seeing the evil all over the place. They might see people as very aggressive, passive-aggressive. They might see people's, evil intentions and how the world might be, very evil place, but they're all naturally good. That's how they feel about themselves. So they don't really see this shadow of them, of the natural self. They don't see how they project whatever they don't want to acknowledge about themselves. So in summary, what happens is that consciously they are very good. They try to be very good. They try to be good for themselves, for other people, and try to make the world a better place. But in their unconscious ways, they are very destructive towards others because they assume the worst about them, and they are basically projecting all the nasty things onto the world. And because they have this negative judgments about other people, they might be very harsh. They might be quite rude. They might be very impolite. They might be, rigid in their judgments towards other people. But they will not be very aware of what they are doing because their perception of themselves is that they are very good. Now, the third option for a person is to be exactly opposite to what I've just said. Consciously, they will think that they might be very bad people. They are destructive people. But unconsciously, they will see the world as a good place. So what happens is that because they acknowledge consciously that they have this very negative anti-self side to themselves, that they acknowledge their shadow, they acknowledge the evil part of themselves, they will project all the good towards the world. So what's going to happen is that consciously they're going to try to create all these destructive and bad things. They might try to, be mean to people. They might try to, engage in some antisocial behaviors and so on and forth. But unconsciously, they will be doing good. Now, I don't know how to properly explain it in simple and practical ways, but let's imagine the person who is very rude towards other people. They might be very impolite and they might be very blunt. So by doing so, they might be very abusing towards others. That's the conscious intention. That's the conscious perception of themselves. But unconsciously, they will provide these other people with means of self-development and developing new skills and offering them a new perspective. So even if explicitly it might look like an abuse, implicitly it might be very educational process for other people. So there is this mixture of intentions again. And again, just like the good people, they will not be aware that they are in conflict in themselves because nobody is all good and nobody is all bad. There's always a composition of both sides, of the self and the anti-self. It all depends what you're going to do about it. So that leads us to the fourth stage, or the fourth level, if you like, or the fourth option, because this is not incremental or sequential process. In the fourth stage, a person acknowledges that there is a good and there is an evil in them. They have good intentions and they have evil intentions. So what they do is that they engage in a conscious development of their personality and behaviors. So basically what happens is that they give up on being all good and they give up on being all evil because they acknowledge that you can't make a firm distinction between these two without going into conflict about what constitutes good and what constitutes evil in the first place, because it might be very situational, depending on your, intentions and the context and other people and their interpretations and so on and forth. So this fourth stage of the so-called conscious learning is about integrating the good and the bad. So the end result is that you acknowledge that there will be certain situations where you will be all good, that you will be the best version of yourself, you will try to help people, you will be on your best behavior. But in other situations where, the context demand of it, you might activate the so-called anti-self and display these destructive behaviors in order to, make your point, protect yourself, or even save other people. It all depends on the context. So I think it's a very nice explanation of integrating your shadow, which can be quite complementary to the whole Jungian theory, because it offers this fresh and quite practical perspective on the problem of good and evil in the human nature. So if we look at these stages from a perspective of finding the meaning of life, finding the purpose, we can see that this life purpose, life mission, according to this theory, will be quite different to each and every person, depending on what stage they are. For example, if an individual is on this stage 1, so that they are quite unconscious and they are not very self-aware, they're not very aware of the natural intentions and motivations, we can say that they might struggle with life meaning, they might struggle with life purpose, and usually they will search for this meaning outside. They will search for the meaning in the job that they do, in the relationship that they have. And if they are creative, because maybe they are creative, they will find some purpose and meaning in what they create and the hobbies and how they express themselves. That's the one possibility. If someone is on the stage 2, so basically they assume that they're all good and that all their intentions are absolutely spotless, the meaning of their life will be to create the good in the world, help other people, help themselves, and, taken to an extreme, perhaps they might, advocate for various moral and ethical rights to the world. They might be very religious, because I think it happens to some religious people that they adopt this stance that religion is about being all good, but they dismiss the other half of the picture. For example, Jesus Christ wasn't all good, or wasn't all perfect all the time. So if we look at all of those historical figures or religious figures, we can see that there is this combination of good and bad in their acts. Anyway, that's one option for them. They will derive the meaning of their life from intentionally trying to be good, trying to be the best version of themselves, trying to be moral and very ethical towards others. Now, someone who is on the other end of the spectrum, which is a so-called stage 3, where they perceive themselves as being all bad, they might derive the meaning of their life from destroying the very meaning itself. So instead of trying to create something, they will want to destroy as much as they can, which isn't necessarily bad, because during times of, let's say, oppression or some revolution, we need people like this because we need to destroy the old and create something new. So again, those so-called evil people might not acknowledge the good that they might be able to create through their actions. So that's another perspective to look at. But for them, basically the meaning of life will be to advocate for the bad, advocate for the destructive. They might be very pessimistic, they might be very nihilistic, and they might try to undermine the meaning of life of other people. They might be bullies, they might be abusers. So it depends on the temperament and life experiences, in my opinion. Now, in the fourth stage, in the so-called conscious living, where a person is aware of both drives, without trying to completely go into an extreme, their life meaning is to simply learn and become as aware as possible. Their intentions are essentially the original intentions combined with the anti-self, without going into an extreme. So the primary goal, again, would be to avoid suffering, avoid pain, through the constructive and creative action, but they will also acknowledge that sometimes you need to spice things up with bad action, with something destructive or something that might be considered as mean or rude or simply indecent even, if that's what the situation demands. So they are able to synthesize these both sides together in order to create a new meaning, in order not to completely transcend the good and the bad and be beyond morals or the law, but to simply acknowledge the human nature of having both good and evil intentions, but without going into extremes, but somehow uniting them through the conscious action and through the, throughout evaluation of every situation they find themselves in. So that's pretty much it for today. And if you would like to read the whole paper on this theory of life mission theory and the anti-self, I provided the link to the paper in the description, and I strongly encourage you to read it because it's very interesting theory. There are more papers on this subject on the internet. If you just type in life mission theory in Google, you're going to find out many interesting things. Now, if you have any comments or questions, please feel free to leave a comment below. And if you enjoy my videos, please share and subscribe. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.